tourists come to stare at where I grew up, which was in a little corner of Bellingham, Washington. It was a little piece of heaven. Bellingham was a small town and it had 7 theaters, all within about a 4-block area. This is before TV had really caught hold, and so movies were all the thing. And they had double features, and if I was lucky, it would be a Roy Rogers double feature I'd get to go to. He was this amazing cowboy actor who was constantly chasing after the bad guys and saving the schoolmarm in the most fabulous and selfless ways. One day when I found out that through the newspaper that there would be a Roy Rogers double feature playing on Saturday, I could hardly wait. I would walk a mile down to my grandpa's grocery store. We'd talk with him a little while. He'd give me a free candy bar. I'd stick it in my pocket. And then I'd stand out front and catch the bus, and the bus would take me 2 miles into town. While it was true that Roy Rogers had captured my interest, it was my granddad who had captured my heart. He was this 5'4", fire plug kind of guy with a wonderful wit, and he played a big role in my life. We'd talk about Bullet and Trigger and everyone else in Roy Rogers' entourage. Now, Granddad had never seen the singing cowboy in action, but he was interested in whatever I was interested in, and I cared a lot. So he'd listen patiently as I told every tale of daring do. Since he was the owner of the local grocery store, as far as I was concerned and my friends were concerned, he was like the neighborhood celebrity. And since he was the guy who stood behind the candy counter, that made him a bit of a hero. Like all septuagenarians of his time, he wouldn't consider going outside unless he was wearing a suit. And along with that suit, he'd have to have a hat. And in his case, that was a fedora. As soon as he stepped outside, pop, that fedora went on. So he would always go outside dressed in a suit with the hat and the fedora. So I'd run down to the store on the day of the double feature, and I tell Grandpa I'm going to catch the bus out front, and he says he's going to be going downtown as well. He's going down to the wholesale house, and perhaps he'll run into me. So with the thought of possibly bumping into my grandfather in my mind, I head off to that Roy Rogers double feature. I'd save $1. It took me 25 cents to get the bus and 25 cents for the movie, and then give me 50 cents for the candy and popcorn. As the movie came to an end and Roy Rogers had locked up the last bad guy and sang the last verse of Happy Trails to You, I left the theater with a skip in my step and off to the bus station. I was skipping along and thinking of Roy's latest conquest, and I was confronted by an image that stopped me in my tracks. There, not 20 feet away, laying on the cement, was my grandfather. He looked like he was dead. There was a guy in a fedora clutching a brown paper bag, and it was Grandpa. And I didn't know what had happened. Had he had a heart attack on his way home from the wholesale house? What had happened to Grandpa? As I drew closer to Grandfather, my fear turned to confusion. Here it was, a busy Saturday afternoon. There was a stream of people walking by, and no one was helping, no one was lending a hand. Why was no one helping? Were there no heroes in Bellingham? Well, I rushed to my grandfather's side. I fall to my knees, and, I brush aside the fedora, and I see that it's not my grandfather after all. It's some stranger, an older guy who's not shaven, who's obviously been drinking, in fact, probably dead drunk. And then a warm feeling of relief spread over me as I realized it wasn't my grandfather. My grandfather wasn't dead. My grandfather was alive. I stood there and just tears running down my cheeks, and a lady walked by and asked me if I needed help, and I said I was okay and sort of gathered myself and walked over to the bus stop to go home. As I rode home on the bus, I realized that I had equated the fedora with my grandfather, and that had caused me a great deal of grief. I was never going to make that mistake again. Then my emotions started in a different direction. My wide-eyed innocence took over. The better me took over. Yes, he wasn't my grandfather, but surely he was someone's grandfather. And the people who went by, why didn't someone help him? I cried for the man all the way home. It was kind of a transformation in my life, I was coming to realize that the world wasn't all heroes and lollipops. When I finally arrived home at our house on 25th Street, I burst through the door and told Mom I thought Grandpa had been dead, but then it was somebody else. She smiled knowingly and said it was probably a street person and he was sleeping it off. But where were his grandkids, I asked? Where was the little boy who would fall on his knees and take him in his arms and help him home? Mom didn't have an answer. I was forever changed that day. First, it opened the door into a part of life that I'd never seen before. But the other lesson was probably even more profound. That was the lesson of the fedora. I learned that if I placed the fedora on a stranger, transforming them into a person I love, they then became worthy of my care and attention. putting a face on the faceless masses, assigning a name to a war victim, thinking of a person who's caused you grief at work, thinking them as a decent human being. This humanizing act has a dramatic impact on how you first think about and then treat others. The next time you're feeling indignant, judgmental, or angry towards another person, put a fedora on them. Ask, why would a reasonable, rational, and decent person do that? Not only will your feelings towards them change, but so will your actions. You'll become a far more empathetic, caring, and effective person, all through the aid of a fedora.